called on Rogaire Dubh, the Black Rogue. It's in the key of D, my favorite key. For this one, I got my G string tuned up to A. And it just helps with some of the chord things. The triple stops, because we're going to be using 3 strings. This lesson, this video, this tutorial, this is really all about variation. There's a million ways to play this tune. I'm not going to do all million. I'm going to look at 3 or 4 different ideas about how to vary and why. This is a video that I could make 25 times and each time would be different. And I would probably be as confused as you by the end of it. So here's what the tune sounds like if we don't do too many crazy things to it. On Patreon, I'm going to have slowed down, tabbed out, and fully notated versions of this tune, gradually adding in all the ornamentation so that you can learn the tune, get very familiar with it, and then think about adding in the variations. What is a variation? Well, it's taken the melody, the kind of the framework of where the tune starts and finishes, and then changing the journey between the 2 points without leaving the country. Is that a good description? Essentially, variations are using lots of different tricks, tools, ideas to create a different interpretation of the overall feel or vibe of the tune. That might be the best way to put it across. So some of the easy things that you can do are to think about the chord structure and emphasizing the chords, overemphasizing the rhythm using syncopation, which is a different form of rhythm, using ornamentation so that you lean slightly away from the melody, but always just teetering on the edge of where the tune is actually going. It's a hard cookie cutter prescription to think about. And a lot of this comes down to trial and error, with lots of error. Probably the easiest way to start doing variations is to copy other people's variations, then adapt them to a different tune in the same key. And if you do that enough times, you'll start to learn the language of the music, the language of Irish music, the language of the variations. And it's a little bit, I think, like learning the English language, then learning local colloquialisms, and then being able to tell a joke in one part of the country with the vernacular of that particular area and pulling off the joke. Does that make sense? I think it's something like that. Lots of different musicians will have different ways of even thinking about variations, and some of them won't like the concept at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first part a number of times, because I don't know how many yet. The first time I play it, I'm going to stick closely to the melody as I know it, the simple melody. And then I'm going to start to just try to get into the music and stop thinking about it. That's when the best variations come. So that's why it might take me a couple of goes to get into some of the fun stuff. definitely starting getting into overthinking. Second part. With any tune, trying to find the hook, the interesting part, the bit that jumps out and is the character of the tune. The first part is very much the A chord, that C sharp note, fret 4. That's the thing that's calling out for attention. The tune is in the key of D, but the very first chord of the tune is in A major. Probably what makes this such a great tune is that the first half is almost like the setup of a joke or a story, and the second part is the resolve. So the entire first part is leaning into this A major chord. It really doesn't come down to the tonic, to the bass, the home bass of the tune, until we get to the second part. So that brings up the whole idea of making a feature of the A. Making a big chord out of it. I like to make a seventh. I know everybody doesn't love these, but double string tremolo triplets, I like those. They're a kind of a flamboyant flourish. They're a bit of fun. You wouldn't do it every single time, but for one round of the tune, they're a bit of crack. Now these are much harder, right? Because you really need to have good pick control to pull them off in time. Given each of these three strings kind of their own value, as opposed to playing them all at the one time like a chord. This is probably one of the most challenging Irish banjo techniques. It's not particularly Irish, but on an Irish tenor banjo. You might notice that I lean my pinky onto the head for that, so that I have something to sweep into, a bit of structure behind the hand. These work really nicely in the second part as well. Try them out. If nothing else, they're going to benefit your overall picking, your overall strength in your right hand, and the control of your picking and picking pattern. If you're looking to try your first ever variation and you're wondering, give me something simple, Enda, well, an octave change for a measure or two is the easiest way to start something that's a variation and that's a difference. And one way to do this is at the very start of the second part is to play it down an octave. So here's the end of the first part. The next notes, down to that A, play them an octave lower. Okay, and then go back up to where the tune is based. So that's a very easy variation to start out with. I'm going to play it for you now. Lots of variations, or maybe all variations, are gonna be easier to do once you understand the chord structure of a part of the tune or the whole tune. So an example of this is the second part. So that's D, G, probably a D, A. Now the reason that's important is that you can do something like this. Which is to put in descending or ascending bass notes that you're dropping into the tune. So you're just substituting part of the higher melody with a lower note. Understanding which note is supposed to be played will be easier once you understand the chord structure. Now you can always just hit them and hope, and you're only going to be one note away from the right note at any time anyway, as Victor Wooten famously said. In my second book on the banjo, I wrote quite a lot about the different tools and the different ideas for creating variations. Creating contrast between light and soft, loud and dark, loud and dark, loud and soft, minor, major, and some of the ideas that pop up in Baroque music, which is repetition and mirroring, rhythmical emphasis where we lean in very heavily into punching out the rhythm in one section and then contrasting that with some lyricism, which means playing with flow in the next part. So an idea of that in the first part will be this. So you're coming from hitting that low A string, which I know you need to tune it up to A for this part, and I'm taking a lot of license with that. You're almost highlighting the lyrical part that's coming by using a chromatic rundown. And then a big, open, gentle chord. And for full effect in this, I would probably slide slightly up the neck and get a more lyrical lute-like sound just for the first couple of notes of that second part. The purpose being the creation of the contrast. Maybe we should leave it at that. Maybe that's enough. Otherwise, I'll end up doing variations on the variation. And where might that end? Hit the like and subscribe. I hope you watched all of this. Share it with your friends.